Alright, so the hope of this video is to get you guys into D&D Beyond so you can create a character. Within the Facebook group there should be a link that I've provided to join the campaign. That allows your characters to use the resources I've provided through my account to build your characters. Once you've found that post and the link, you'll follow that link to the D&D Beyond sign-in page. You can sign in either with a Google account or an Apple ID or create an account with either of those. Twitch I don't think is available for new users anymore. I'll go ahead and sign in with an alternate Google account that I have so we see the same thing. Once into the campaign, you'll see that you have the ability to create a character with another button here. You'll see the name of the campaign that my Dungeon Master account, which is Skulls, has invited you to join. Again, once you've seen this, you should be able to go ahead and just create a character. Once you've got to this page, and I guess first note, if you hadn't gotten to this page yet and see a different page with 3 blue buttons up in this general area, you'll want to click the one on the farthest left that I believe says Standard Creation Process. Once you've done that, you should see this then. The first thing, of course, you'll see is your username and character. You can, if you have an idea for your character name, you can go ahead and type that in here. If you need help with creating a character name, you can actually use this randomize button to create a variety of different random names, or you can also follow this link here to a fantasy name generator website, which gives you a lot more options that are more customized to your character's race, or maybe even some of their background. There's also a quick button here for tokens that you can choose from for pictures of your character, but it might be a good idea to wait on this until after we've finished the creation process. Things to note on this page are these character preferences. We can actually leave all of this stuff the same here at the top. Again, we're not going to be using a lot of this content, but there's no need to change it. We are going to add a couple optional features. So there's optional class features we want to turn on and customize your origin we want to turn on. Everything else can stay the same as it should show up in the creation by default. Next, we're going to navigate through these 5 steps of the creation process by using these arrow keys to the left and right. So we want to get to our race selection and hit next. Once we're into our race selection, you'll see there's quite a few selections that are available. I believe there's 32 different choices between core races and then their sub races or their variants. Again, these race options are provided by all of the books that I've shared with you guys, and again, that gives you guys a little more choice on your creation. So again, the only thing that I would ask is we do not choose a custom lineage, which is an option I've unlocked, but since we're doing an intro campaign, let's not confuse ourselves and go that route. But what we can do here is we can choose any of these different races, and as we were to select one of these, and I'll just choose Dragonborn here for a second, you'll see that there's one base race, which is this one here, and then there's 3 variants. And if we were to click on any of these, we would then get a pop-up that shows a little bit about that race. So if we're unfamiliar, you can click on that. It'll give you a kind of just a 1 or 2 sentence description with an example portrait. It tells you what their racial traits are, and then it'll explain what those racial traits are in a little more detail below. You can also click this hyperlink and bring up a separate web page altogether, which gives a lot more information, but as a quick highlight, that's what this is going to show you. But maybe in this example, we choose something that's maybe a little more familiar with everybody or relatable. So let's go into half-elf again. Several different sub-race choices or variants, but let's just go with the regular old half-elf in this example. When we click on it, again, we'll see that quick 1-sentence description that basically describes that one of our parents was elf and one was human, and we, for the most part, look human in the portrait. Because we are half elf, we do have dark vision, we have some Fey ancestry and skill versatility. The other thing to note here is depending on your race you choose, you'll see there are ability score increases that are by default for that race. In this example, half-elves get a +2 to their charisma, and then they get to add a +1 to 2 other abilities of their choice by 1. Again, Dark Vision, Fey, Ancestry, and Skill Versatility are things that we would get because we're half-elf. And then we also get some languages based off our race. So in this example, let's go ahead and choose half-elf. Once we've made our selection, if there are options available for your race or your class or any other options downstream in the process, these blue circles with an exclamation point will show up, which will let you know you need to make some decisions in that creation process. So again, if we come to this first one and click on this box, it'll tell us that, again, because we're half-elf, we're getting that +2 increase to our charisma, and then we can choose 2 different abilities down here for our ability score increases. So I'm going to again choose an example dexterity because we want to be quick because we're an elf, and then maybe wisdom is another +1. Again, we can do that. We can do our skill versatility, which again tells us we can choose some additional skills. So I'm going to go with insight and perception. And then language choices, again, they'll bring up a drop down here, and I'm not sure you guys are seeing all these drop downs because it might be on a separate pop-up, but I'm just going to go ahead and pick giant as an example of language. Another thing to note here, because we did enable the optional customized origin feature at the beginning, we can change some of this, some things about our race. So in this example, if we were to come over and click Origin Manager, with half-elves, we can actually choose in any of our races that have those default options about, again in this example, +2 to charisma. We can actually decide, you know, I like an elf, but maybe he's not charismatic. I want him to be more intelligent. So I can actually change that default from charisma to anything I want by selecting this origin ability score increase option. Again, it'll replace that default one no matter what my race is. And then I could also change my origin language choices. I don't think that's important in this example, but go ahead and see what any options there are and if that's something you would want to include in your character. Once you've made those choices, you can come back and you'll see that now we have another option here for our ability score increases because that default charisma check has now been changed to give us an option. So again, I was talking about intelligence, so let's go ahead and just change that to be our +2. Oh, and I guess it cleared our dexterity and it cleared our wisdom that we had before. And once we've done all that, we can then go to our class step by hitting next. Again, quite a few options here. Everything from the player's handbook has been unlocked. The only real add you'll see is the artificer is something that's in an additional book. But then the content I've unlocked will allow more choices within these races at later levels or more options or abilities that you wouldn't see straight from the player's handbook. But in this example, again, since we did go with the intelligence option, and maybe I want to cover spell choices in this video, I'm going to go ahead and choose Wizard here. Again, much like the race option, when we click on this, it's going to tell us everything about that class in a summary, give us a quick 1 or 2 sentence, what kind of hit die they get, their primary ability. Again, we chose intelligence, so luckily that's what we're going to go here, and then what their primary saving throws are that they're proficient in. It does also list some of their downstream abilities that they would gain and what they would have at first level. So again, you could read and summarize those for yourself if you're not familiar. But let's go ahead and add class. Once in the wizard, again, we'll have some things here we can do. Again, we get proficiencies because we're a wizard. We chose, you know, a few a second ago, but again, as default wizards, we're proficient in these weapons. We do not have any tool proficiencies. Our saving throws, again, that we're proficient in are intelligence, wisdom, and then we can choose 2 skills from this list that's provided. Each class has a different list, but I know we already chose insight, and I believe we already chose perception, so perception isn't on this list. So let's choose Arcana because we're a wizard, and then I'm going to choose investigation, which seems like a good fit too. Again, if you're unfamiliar with these, just go ahead and research what those are, either on a separate Google page or something, or you can use in Beyond to do that, but it doesn't really give you a description of what those are in this part of the process. It also, again, tells us what we get for spellcasting. Again, explains some of that process, and again, gets into more detail here as you expand that information. If you are curious what happens at higher levels, there's also this plus button down here, which will tell you what happens at higher levels. So there's 8 other abilities you'll gain throughout your career as a character, I guess, and you can see what those are and then expand out what those things are to try to understand what happens downstream in your character. There are the optional feature manager options here that we did unlock with one of those changes at the beginning. Again, this would give you some additional content choices if you were to choose that. Again, see if these are something you'd want to include or not, but otherwise make those choices and then see if there's anything that's changed on this first page. I'm going to go ahead and skip spells here and show that in the character sheet once we've got the character created. I guess I could just quick show you. It'll just tell you that you currently don't have any spells and that we can add spells and all of that, but I'll show that later. So on next to ability scores. When we create ability scores, the options we're going to allow you guys to use, and most DMs are going to allow you to use, is to use something called standard array. Standard array gives you the option to add a set scores to each ability, or choices for each ability, which will tell you can have 1-8, 1-10, 1-12, 1-13, 1-14, and 1-15, and then your racial abilities would be increased to those different things based off of what race you chose. You can actually get the same thing by using point buy. So again, it's just easier to use point buy and gives a little more customization, but we're not going to allow anybody to manually add scores or roll scores just because of how much variance there can be in that process. And again, I can't see you guys roll when you're at home creating these characters. So if we use point buy, the way this works, it's going to tell us we have 27 points that we can spend on our default 8. So everything would start with an 8 as an ability score. And then you can see that a couple of these actually have a 9, a 10, a 9, and that's because we chose those racial bonuses earlier, which will show here that, again, we added 1 to dexterity, we added 2 to intelligence, and then we added 1 to wisdom. But again, as we were to add scores, we would be using points. So again, I wanted to be pretty wise as a wizard. So to get a 16, which is the good starting score for a first level character, I want to add make this a 14. And when I use that 14 here, it actually cost me 7 points to do that. The higher the point value that we want to have, the more points it costs us. Let's see, I also want to be fairly quick so I avoid getting hurt in combat. And I did add a +1 dexterity, so again, I'm going to change this to a 15, which gives me an overall 16. And then maybe fairly wise, because I did have some skills that were based off of wisdom, and I also have a +1 there, so if I add 13 there, it gives me a total of 14. And then hit points are always good, so let's add some here, and then I have 1 extra point I can spend on, I just call it charisma. I hope that makes sense. Again, you can play with some of that. But once you've decided your ability score increases, you can go ahead and click next to description. Again, if we haven't changed our name, we can go ahead and do that. We know a lot about our race and our class. We can go into this option and create a picture. And let's just say my half-elf. Let's just go with this picture here. I can apply a picture. I then have choices on, if I have any language choices, there might be a blue circle here, but then I want to get into what my background is. Again, this is what your character did before they became an adventurer. There should be quite a few choices here. If you were to click one of these, let's just say entertainer, you'll see a paragraph that describes what an entertainer was, what skill proficiencies they get. Again, you want to be mindful that if there's skills here that they're proficient in, or those ones you've already chosen, because you might want to go back to skills and change those skills, right? But again, here we're on entertainer. Maybe that's not a good choice because, again, I don't think I'm going to be jumping around in combat, and disguise kit might not be, something a wizard would use, and I might not be using a musical instrument unless I wanted to have that be part of my character background. But probably a better fit would be something more like a sage, or maybe I don't know, some kind of far traveler. But I think this example will go with hermit. As we get hermit, again, gives us that description. We'll get proficiencies in medicine and religion, and then a herbalism kit, and then that option also does unlock an additional language. Maybe living in the middle of nowhere as a hermit, I have to do training with some dwarves, which is part of my background, so again, I'll add that to my character sheet. Again, as my background as a hermit, I also get a background feature. Again, some of this stuff comes into play, some of it is just something you might want to incorporate in your character, but again, feel free as you're making your selections for background to read what these background features do or do not do. Each background also has suggested characteristics about personality traits, ideals, or bonds. Again, it's asking you to choose one of these based off of your background you chose, or choose two in personality traits, one for ideal, one for bonds, and one for flaws. You would just add those to your character by selecting these. And maybe logic, and here. And then my flaw would be I need to win arguments to overshadow friendships. Okay. So again, the thought is if you choose something here, try to incorporate into any of the role play that we would do. But again, this stuff is not needed. It's just to add a little more flavor. Same thing with character details. We can choose an alignment. I would ask that everybody choose something that's either good or neutral, and again, I'll explain what those kind of general behaviors are based off the alignment. I don't want anybody to be evil because we need to get along in this campaign, and in Adventures League rule set, evil is also not allowed. So again, you can choose a faith or a deity. Again, there's some of that information in the player's handbook. You could also look that up on D&D Beyond later, but not important here. Lifestyle, this is all just some flair on how you want to live inside a city. Again, are you comfortable living as a poor individual? And this would be your cost per day for accommodations, versus if you're wealthy, you're spending 4 gold a day on your accommodations. So again, not really important here, but if you're interested, go ahead and select something. Physical characteristics, hair color, skin color, eyes, height, weight, how old you are, your gender. Again, try to base that off of what character race you chose, and refer back to that race for details of whether your skin can be green or purple, or is it just something a little more common. Again, once we've done all that, again, there'll be some notes we can add later, and that'll show up here. We filled in anything that was an option, or anything we feel that we wanted to add as flair or character. We can get to equipment by hitting next. The best thing to do here is to go by the equipment option versus the gold. These two are kind of just hidden because they're bolded, but if we choose the equipment option, it's going to give us the default choices for a wizard based off of what we're proficient in, versus gold. We would have to buy individual items and then determine whether we are proficient. So the easy way is to go equipment. As a wizard, it's telling me I could start with a quarterstaff or a dagger. I'm going to go with a Gandalf kind of wizard and have a quarterstaff. I can have a component pouch or an arcane focus, which again, my magic is kind of powered through one of those things. I'm going to go with a focus. This drop down allows it to be a couple different choices, but I'm going to choose crystal because that's the crystal that Gandalf has in the top of his staff. I can have a scholar pack or a explorer pack. Once I choose one of these, it will show you what's included in that kind of pack, and if I don't like what's there, I can always uncheck it and check an explorer's pack. Again, I set out to be an adventurer, so maybe I want these items versus my standard wizard items from a scholar's pack. Again, different classes have different choices here. I get a spell book. I get my starting equipment from being a hermit, which are these things here, which includes 5 gold. And again, once I've done all that, I can add starting equipment. It gives me a list of everything I've just added. Important thing to do here is anything that has an option here of use or wield, we want to turn that on, so it adds it to our character sheet as an action we can use with that item. Pretty simple. Once we're done there, we can hit next. And it really gets us to the end of the creation process. Here we get into view character. We'll see everything. Ignore this D&D Beyond Roll20 thing here because I have my account linked to online play. But again, we'll have our picture, our character, our core stats, our skills. We'll have some tabs here about different things our character can do. So again, we enabled quarterstaff and it shows up here. But if we hadn't enabled that, again, I'll go to inventory and unwield my quarterstaff. It removes that option of quarterstaff as an action. So again, it's important to have everything turned on, particularly your armor. If you're an unarmored individual, you want to make sure that's on because it'll affect your active armor class. We did skip spells, so I want to show you that here real quick on spells. We don't have any spells listed, so we come over here to manage spells. As a wizard, we'll get to be able to cast 2 first level spells at first level before kind of out of magic. We will always have cantrips, but we need to create what our spell list is. So if we click add spells, it'll tell us we have 0 of 3 cantrips learned. So we can come to this cantrip list here. If you're not familiar with the spell, you can click on it. It'll tell you exactly what that spell does. Reference the page in the player's handbook if you happen to have one. But again, D&D Beyond and the account that I've shared with you guys will let you use this as a reference versus physically owning the book. But again, once you've decided you want a spell, you can go ahead and select that as learn. Firebolt's a good attack spell, and then maybe something a little more versatile for out of combat like Mage Hand. Alright, so once I have my 3 cantrips, it'll tell us I have those 3 learned, and then I can learn and prepare up to 4 first level spells, because those are my only options at first level. And those will show up here. Again, we can just select the ones we want to learn. Again, it's not quite important here as the example, but once we've selected those 4, it'll also add any actions we can do with those spells here to our actions tab of things we can do either with our actions or spells. But once we've done that, we need to then prepare our spells. So we've learned our 4, but we need to prepare them. So then we could close this out, come to prepared spells as 3. We have our cantrips are going to always be prepared, but we need to then go to what spells we added to our spell book and then hit prepare on these, because those will be prepared. And in this example of these 4 I have prepared, I can still only cast 2 of those using these 2 slots before I'm out of magic, before I need to rest and regain those spells. Alright, so if at any point we need to change something on our character, we can come up here to manage. We can then go back into the character creation process by clicking manage character levels and then scroll through anything we wanted to change. Again, if we hadn't selected a picture, we can do that. We can change our name and all of those different things here on this list. And you can either scroll back down to the end here and hit view character sheet, or at any time just click the view character sheet button here. Gets us back to the character. Ignore that D&D Beyond thing again. For Roll20, but we can also here with manage character do a couple things about sharing a link if we wanted to show the character to somebody. Now, since everybody's in the campaign, we can all see each other's character sheet, which is kind of handy, so we can see what everybody's using or taking, try to work together as a group. You can export this to a PDF. It'll give you a hyperlink to that PDF it just created. Then you can also download that so you can print it off if you wanted a physical copy. But other than that, that should quite do it, guys. It's been 25 minutes. Hope that helps with creation. Any questions, post in the group or direct message me through Facebook is really kind of be the easiest way to keep that communication going. Hope that helps out, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.